Welcome, everyone, to another episode of the Marz Pod. I am your host, as always, Nathan Marzian. I'm alone today. Brandon is not with me, but he has some stuff to do. But I am here. We got a lot of stuff to talk about. This is the first time I've done a live on here since I think since the Nets series started, but I know for a fact since Game 7. So we got some stuff to talk about, and let's get into it. We got Bucks Nets recap to get to, and we're gonna do a little. I'm gonna do a little preview of Bucks Hawks as well. But let's start with the Nets series because I mean, what a freaking series and what an ending to that series. I mean, I wish I could have done this right after the game because I know people would have been hyped. It would have been really fun, but um, it was. I mean, it was an insane time. We were at the game, me, Brandon, and one other friend, and we're just going absolutely insane. But got back yesterday, and so had some time to kind of look it over, and so let's talk about it. After Game 2, it looked like this series was pretty much over. Even I was kind of in that boat of like, it doesn't look like we can beat this team, and it sucked. I tweeted out something along the lines of like, hey, they only took care of home court advantage. They only did what they needed to do. We're still in this, and I did think like it's not over yet, but it was. Back in your mind, you're like, it's about as close to over as it can be because we got demolished the first 2 games, even without Harden. It was just like, damn, like we're not winning the series. Even after Game 3 was like they won, but they didn't look good, and KD did not play well at all. The Nets did not have a good game. It reminded us of the Toronto series, Eastern Conference Finals, where first 2 games we blew them out. Game 3, we looked really bad and still almost won, which is what the Nets did. And it was like, where we still got this series. Well, all of a sudden, Game 4, we looked in this series, we looked a lot better, just like Toronto looked a lot better, and the series really shifted. And so it didn't feel like that. Like after Game 3, I did not go. I wasn't like, oh, we're going to win this series. I was not confident. It was nice to get back in it, but Game 4 is when it really shifted to like, wow, like we looked a lot better in Game 4, and you started to believe that we could actually do this. Game 5, we won't really talk about. Game 6, I think, was our best game of the series, and then Game 7 was it was awesome. It was an all-time great game with some all-time great performances. Giannis had 40. Drew struggled but came through late. Chris came through late, and just an unbelievable game because they went from like down 5 to up 3 in those final minutes, like just like that. And all of it, like I just remember being like, we're down 5, and it looks like the season's probably over. And all of a sudden, it was like Drew hits a 3, and you're up by 3, and it's like, oh my god, we're gonna do this. KD hits that shot, which was insane, and so much respect for Kevin Durant. We'll get to him later, but so unbelievably good in that series. And but after that shot, it looked like we're in the stadium, and it just was like, this is it. Like it didn't feel like it felt like that was going to be kind of take the wind out of our sails, and everything was going to go downhill after that. And it looked like that for the first 2 minutes of overtime. Somehow we pulled it together and won that game. So absolutely insane. But I mean, just looking back at the series, it really felt like the Bucks would need to play even without, Harden or without Kyrie. It still felt like the Bucks would have to play really, really well in order to beat this team. And they really didn't. Like they didn't play fantastic. They didn't even play close to their best. They didn't shoot particularly well. Drew wasn't good. Chris obviously sucked the first 2 games. The offense was bad for most of the series. Like the offense did not look good, especially down the stretch. The offense just really looked bad. Like they didn't run many plays. Bud was bad at times, and they still somehow won this series. Even I know the Nets consistently had a guy out, but like you're going up against Kevin Durant, who's the best player in the world right now. And they still had one of those other guys in every single game of the series. So it was. I mean, it's insane that I can't get over how we won this series. Not that we didn't deserve it, but it just was like, wow, like some stuff went wrong and we still won this. I mean, as I said, the shooting was not good. They shot 30% from 3 in this series. They shot 39% in the regular season and dropped all the way down to 30% in this series. Pat was 6 of 21, that's 29%. Bryn was 6 of 22, 27%. Drew shot 26% from three. He's been off all playoffs shooting the ball. Was really good in the regular season, but just hasn't had it. We'll get to that a little bit later. Giannis, 8 of 31 in this series. That's 26%. And really, it was only Brooke and Chris that shot well from deep. And Chris was not good in those first two games, but he was able to pull it together and have a good series. But someone said even with it being 8v5, we still won. Yeah, that game 7 was we were yelling at the refs because I was like, we are not going to lose because of the refs. Like, I'm not letting this happen in game 7. This is crap. And it almost did. But some very, very questionable calls in that game. But we won't get to that. We won't talk too much about the refs. Back to the shooting. Game 1, Bucks were 6 of 30. Game 2, they were 8 of 27. This is from 3. Game 3, 6 of 31. Game 4, 16 of 47, which is decent, 34%. Game 5 was a good shooting game, 13 of 32, which is, a game they should have won, but whatever. Game 6, back to 7 of 33. And then finally in game 7, 15 of 36, when they really needed it. Guys hit shots. Pat had 3 threes in game 7. PJ Tucker had 3 threes in game 7. Like, they just finally had that game where it was like they hit shots. And it was so good because you knew it was coming eventually. I'm like, they can't shoot this bad forever. And finally, games 5 and game 7, as we said, they should have won game 5, but game 7, luckily they did. It just finally happened. And yeah, 7 of 33 from game 3 and game 6 and still won by 20. Like, that shows you how good we were in game 6 because the offense was just a lot better. Everything was a lot better. Giannis didn't attempt a 3. Guys didn't hit shots, but we were awesome in game 6. I think that was our best game as a team, even with the bad shooting. But offensively, like, as I said, way too much isolation ball, particularly in, those first 3 games. Games 1 and 2, we got blown out. Game 3, we won, but it just still was like, this offense does not look good. They did run the pick and roll with Giannis as the screener quite a bit. Like, at least they did that. But down the stretch, there was just a lot of times, especially in game 5, that, the fourth quarter was awful, but it was just like, they're not doing anything. And again, it's just like, man, they did that and still won the series against Kevin Durant. Like, that's kind of how good, it does show good how good the defense was as well, which we'll get to. But let's talk about some of the players. We'll start with Giannis. Fantastic in pretty much every game outside of game 2. Game 2, everyone was bad. We were down 50 in that game. But outside of that, absolutely fantastic. Even with that game 2, his numbers, 31.9 points, 12.9 rebounds, 3.6 assists, 57% from the field. And the free throws were a struggle, 48%. But he made some big free throws in games 6 and 7. And in game 7, he ended up finishing the game 7 of his last 9 from the line. The whole crowd was going after him, counting out loud, just going absolutely insane. Super pressurized free throws. And he made 7 of his last 9. He started 1 of 5, and it looked like, oh boy, this is going to get ugly fast. We can't have this in a game 7. But mentally, like, he showed that, hey, I can block it out a little bit and make some free throws in about as clutch a situation as you can get. A game 7 on the road, making 7 of his last 9. And the takes after game 5 were flying. Giannis, like, in this series, KD was obviously awesome, but like Giannis, the difference in the play between Giannis and KD was like not as much as it seemed to be made out to be. Like, people acted like KD was, he was playing like the best player in the world, but then they acted like it was like, oh, all this stuff just shows that Giannis isn't even close to KD. And I'm like, Giannis is playing super well as well. And after game 5 in particular, Giannis had a really good overall game. He struggled down the stretch, but it was like I went on Twitter and every single take was about how Giannis can't be the guy. Giannis is a Robin. You're not winning a championship with Giannis as your best player. And he proceeds to go out and, put up 30 in game 6, 40 in game 7, and the Bucks go on and win. And it's like, people just, Giannis is fantastic. I know he doesn't do it the same way that a lot of guys do. He doesn't have the outside shot. He's not the flashiest player, but he gets the job done as consistently as anyone. The dude put up 32 points a game in this series on 57% from the field. Like, it's just the difference in how much love that those two guys got was so big, and the gap between their plays was not that big. KD was better than Giannis in this series, but it wasn't like this drastic difference where you're like, wow. Again, the takes acted like this whole series just shows that Giannis is nowhere near KD as a player. And I'm watching, I'm like, Giannis had 34, 35, 36 points. Like, what are you watching? It's not like Giannis went out there and had 20 and KD scoring 50. No, like Giannis was playing just, right behind him. But we all know how good Giannis is. Anyone, any Bucks fan, but I think those last two games absolutely massive for his legacy. Like that is a career changing. Those were a career changing two games, especially game 7. Like, you lose that game, there's a ton of questions. There's a ton of people that are going to be ready to like draw conclusions and kind of not close the door. I mean, he's only 26 years old, but like a lot of people would just be like, is he ever going to get it done? Is he ever actually going to be the guy you can rely on in the playoffs? Puts up 40 and they win, and that's just again career changing moment. They could, if they go on and win the title here, like his legacy's changed forever, and they're that close to going home in game 7. And it all just kind of rides on that. And it's really crazy to think about. Like, just Katie's foot being on that line changes so much about the narratives that, people are going to have on them for the rest of their careers. But, Giannis was great. We'll move past him because we all know how great he is. Let's move on to Chris. So the first two games, it was about as bad as you can get. I believe he was, 6 of 23 in the first game, and I think he started the second game like 0 for 7, 0 for 9, 0 for 10. I don't even know what it was. Couldn't make a shot. Like, it was terrible. His overall numbers in the first two games: 15 points a game, 2.5 assists, 30% from the field, and 23% from three. And people, rightfully so, were, they were pissed. I was pissed. I was like, you cannot play like this in the biggest series of the year. And he responded extremely well. I wasn't on the we need to get rid of Chris Middleton train, but it was, I'm concerned. And if this continues, absolutely we have to look into that option. But I wasn't closing the door on Chris yet, and I'm glad I didn't, because last 5 games of this series, 28 points a game, which is crazy. 28 points a game for Chris. 8.6 rebounds, 5 assists, 2.6 steals. His defense was great. 45% from the field and 41% from three. Multiple games over 30 points. And he just was so much better. And again, defensively, he stepped up. But particularly at home, he struggled. The road games he struggled with in this series way more than he did at home. And he's always been that kind of player. He's always the guy that thrives at home. Shoots better at home. In games 3 and 4, after he sucked in those first two. Comes back home games 3 and 4. And looks a lot better. Game 5, he did struggle overall. He wasn't terrible, but I think he was 8 of 22 or something, just not his best game. And comes back home for game 6 and was massive in game 6. He put up 38. Probably one of his best performances ever, just in terms of how big of a game it was. He was so good in that game. And then game 7 wasn't great. First half wasn't great, kind of withdrew too. I remember going into halftime, I was like, these guys need to step up because we're not winning this game if Giannis is our only guy that's stepping up. And Chris was big down the stretch, hit a huge 3, hit a huge fadeaway in overtime. Just, that guy always comes through. And we need to appreciate how good that guy. 28 points a game over the last 5 games. This is why I hate having that narrative of Chris doesn't come through when you need him to. He comes through in the clutch. He did it against Miami in game 1 when hit that game winner. He did it in this series in game 7. He did it over these last 5 games. He stepped up in the biggest situation he can possibly be in. If you're down 2-0, you need him to step up. He sucked the first 2 games, and he absolutely did. He responded. So awesome to see from Chris, because it looked like it was going to get bad. He was so bad in those first 2 games that even I, one of his biggest defenders, I was worried too, but I'm so happy he snapped out of it. And yes, hashtag Chris Middleton is good. Chris made the biggest shot of his life, so the other games don't matter. Yeah, and in game 7, those 2 shots were just like he had a 3 with about 2.5 minutes left that pushed it from a 5-point game to a 2-point game. Absolutely massive, and then obviously the shot to put them up in overtime. But yeah, now we move on to Drew Holiday, the final of the big 3. So Giannis was good for the whole series. Chris was really good outside of the first 2 games. Drew Holiday was the one guy that he just consistently was not that good, especially like particularly offensively. He was good defensively. Offensively, just not great, especially the 3-point shooting. He was 1 of 10 in game 6. As I mentioned before, 26% in the series. He was solid as a distributor, 44 assists and only 12 turnovers, which is like, this is why I hate the whole people acting like, oh, when he's bad, he's like Bledsoe. No, he's not even close. Bledsoe, people forget how bad Bledsoe was. Bledsoe in the playoffs, like Drew putting up 44 assists and only 12 turnovers, that's nothing compared to like Bledsoe's what he would do in the playoffs. And Drew, so Drew would still at least be distributing the ball well. He was finishing pretty well from 2. He just was taking a little bit too many threes and not making any of them. And his defense was still really good. He was a guy you can rely on. You can put him on multiple guys, as always. He'd go on Kyrie, he'd go on Harden. If he needed to go on Durant for a little bit, he would. And Durant can still score over him whenever he wants because of just his size, but he made it tough and he fought his ass off. But this is why, like, Drew at his worst is still way better than Bledsoe was when in those playoff series. Drew in game 7, like, it was terrible, 5 of 23, but he comes through when you need him to. And it was just like, down the stretch, hits a 3, hits a mid-range. So he hits the 3 to go up 3. Then he hits a mid-range to, I believe, go up 3 again. I don't know. Yeah, go up 3 again. Then he gets fouled, goes to the line, hits a free throw. Like, he just stepped up big time when we needed him to. And as I said, even when he played bad, it was, he had 44 assists in the series and 12 turnovers. That's very, very good. Average 6 assists per game, 15 points, 36% from the field and 26% from 3. Not even close to as good as you want him to be, but he made plays when you needed him to, and he wasn't awful. And again, a lot of it was just a 3-point shooting that was awful. His other offensive, the other offensive aspects of his game, passing was fine, finishing was pretty fine. It was just too many threes and not being able to hit any threes. But hopefully that changes in this series because he has potentially a much more favorable matchup defensively or on him defensively. PJ Tucker. That dude was absolutely awesome on Kevin Durant this series, doing exactly what you need a guy to do when he's defending Kevin Durant. Make things tough. He basically, like, you're not going to stop KD. You're not going to you're never going to like prevent him from scoring or prevent him getting 30 points. All you can hope for is just make things as difficult as possible. And that's what he did. Durant shot 45% against him and 31% from 3. He forced 11 turnovers on KD. And Durant's still going to have games where he makes you look foolish, even if you play amazing defense. Durant's going to make you look dumb at times. Game 5, he put up 49. But PJ still just the next game 6, played fantastic defense. Game 7, played really good defense. He just consistently did about as good of a job as you can ask for. And he stepped up in some offensively in a couple of games. He had 3 threes in game 4. He had 3 threes in game 7 from those corner threes that were really timely that we needed. So someone just said how timely his PJ's threes were in game 7. They were huge threes. And for him to be able to do that defensively, make things as difficult as possible on the best player in the world, and then come down and hit some big threes. I love me some PJ Tucker. Huge acquisition this year. And without him, we definitely don't win this series because having him on KD was, amazing. Because, again, Chris did a decent job. Giannis isn't quite quick enough to consistently stay with KD. He can do it for short stretches, but not a whole game. Drew's just too short. PJ was the one guy that you could put him on him, and he's going to make things tough as hell. Let's move on to Brooke Lopez, who played really good defense in this series, as always. There was times where, like, it looked like he was almost going to need to get played off the court because he was kind of being exploited in the pick and roll, the whole Bruce Brown thing. But he ended up being really good defensively and offensively came through. I mean, 41% from three. He was their best 3-point shooter. Hit some in game 7. Hit a huge block on KD in game 7 and averaged 2 blocks a game. 19 dropped 19 in game 1 where they were going to him a lot down low, and 19 in game 7. And he's always been that guy. He's very, very important to any team because offensively he can do, you can put him inside, you can put him outside, and defensively he's that anchor. And he's just doing what Brooke always does. So yeah, he was awesome in OT. As I said, that block on Durant was got to be the biggest block of his career, and I mean it was huge because I think at that time we were up 2, and KD's going around him and probably going to make a layup, and he gets that monster block, and all of a sudden the Bucks are kind of in control. It might have been tied at the time actually. I think they were tied, but yeah, it was tied. But that's because they go down, Bucks go down and score and go up 2. That changes the game. That changes your whole season. So Brooke Lopez doing what he always does. As far as the bench, Bobby not playing the past few games, kind of, not really sure what's going on there. A lot of people ask me about that. Why isn't Bobby playing? I really don't know. Bud mentioned something about spacing the floor, which didn't really make any sense considering Bobby's a really good 3-point shooter and consistent scorer, good rebounder. Play some okay defense, not terrible, but I don't really know what the deal was with that. I'm guessing it was more of a defensive issue where they just didn't want to ever get KD on, Bobby or something like that. Same with Forbes, where Forbes, you kind of saw it coming with Forbes, like when he wasn't shooting particularly well, he's not going to play a lot in this series because you just can't have him out there defensively against these type of offensive players. And so I totally understood that. I'm expecting more Forbes in the Hawks series because they don't have that offensive firepower that you can just hunt mismatches all the time. But it was kind of predictable that he's not going to – this wasn't the type of series where he's going to play a ton in unless he was just nailing all of his shots, and he wasn't doing that. But last but not least, Pat Connaughton, huge in this series, particularly in Game 7 he was fantastic. Those last few games he played really, really well. Some great minutes off the bench, hustling, getting offensive boards, playing some good defense, and making some threes. He had 3 huge ones in Game 7, kind of like PJ's, where they were super timely every time they needed them when they would go down a little bit and they needed a 3 to get back in it. Pat was giving it to him, and just it's huge. I tweeted out, you need to appreciate that guy because we were, myself included, we were very critical of his contract, critical of him last year, but he stepped up this year, shot really well from 3 all season, and didn't shoot crazy good in this series overall. I think he was 0 for 5 in game 6 or 5. One of those games he didn't make a shot. But other than that, really good because he's been hitting some shots when you need him to. So let's hope Pat can keep doing that. And I'm expecting him to, continue to have a big role off the bench, be kind of our 6th man. So, I mean, guys, what a series. Like, let's quickly, before I move on to Bucks Hawks, I haven't really talked much about, Game 7, the whole experience there and everything. 5 minutes left. KD gets the, that's ball kind of gets batted around, ends up, I think, in Harden's hands. He gets it to KD. Pat fouls him and 1. It looked like it was over. And I did not, I was like, this is probably it. This might be the end. James Harden banks in that 3. It looked like it's over. This is going to be it. They just consistently came back. They consistently stayed in the game. Every time, even in the first half, they go down 10, or they go down 9, cut it to 3. They go down 10, cut it to 6. They come out of the half down 6. They go up by 1 immediately. Like, they just consistently stayed in the game. They never let it get out of hand. Late in the game, down 5, all of a sudden cut it to 2, and all of a sudden you're up by 3. And it's just like, it was unbelievable. Someone said, did your eardrums explode when KD hit the game-tying shot? I kind of just zoned out. I just was like, I thought it was a 3. So the shot goes in. I just kind of lost my mind for a second and just stood there like, holy crap, this is, season's over. I looked up and it said 109, 109. And I realized, okay, it's not over, but I was still really sad because I didn't think we'd win in overtime. And let's talk about that. Overtime happens. We don't score until Giannis hits that shot on KD, which amazing, like fantastic shot by Giannis. Because that's the type of shot that Giannis needs. If he develops that type of shot consistently, where he doesn't need to get to the basket, essentially he can get a few feet out, get that little hook shot. That's the type of stuff that'll make him even 10 times better as a player, because having that is huge. But I was just, for him to hit that shot in that moment was just monstrous. And what did that do? That tied it, because we were down 2 for only 2 points were scored in those first 3 minutes of overtime. Giannis ties it. We get some stops. Brooke gets that block. Middleton hits the shot, and all of a sudden you're up 2. And he airballs a shot, and we just went crazy. But again, mad props to KD for that series. He was fantastic in most of those games. There was a couple of games where he didn't shoot particularly well. Game 3 was one of them. PJ made it super tough, but he's the best player in the world right now. Giannis said it. I believe it. He's incredible. Someone mentioned something about Joe Harris. It was huge that Joe Harris went kind of cold. We did a good job chasing him around and making things tough on him. But he did miss some open ones, even late in, I think, overtime. He had an open 3 that he missed. So glad that he didn't torch us. We did the same thing with Duncan Robinson. We were able to prevent Duncan Robinson from torching us. He did pretty good in game 1 of that series, but after that, we handled him pretty well. Blake Griffin was, especially in those home games, Blake Griffin was good, hitting threes and stuff, which annoyed the crap out of me. He'd hit a 3, and I'm just like, this guy is not really a good 3-point shooter. Why is this happening? He played some decent defense on Giannis at times. He made things tough, but Giannis is going to get his. Giannis is not going to get stopped by Blake Griffin, and that's just not going to happen. That's why I got sick of those. Oh, Blake is handling Giannis. No, he wasn't. He was making things slightly tougher than normal, but Giannis was still getting his every single game. And so yeah, I mean, respect to Blake for how he played pretty tough. He played pretty well, but Giannis has always kind of dominated that matchup for the most part. And someone said Harden sucked for that series too. I'm not going to go at Harden too much because of the injury, but yeah, he was 5 of 17 in game 7. Walked off the court, whatever. I have respect for KD and Harden, but I despise Harden and Blake. That's kind of how, I have respect for KD and Kyrie, but I despise Harden and Blake. Someone commented. I agree with that. I don't have a problem with Kyrie. I love KD, but I really don't like Harden and Blake Griffin. Anyways, let's quickly move on to the Hawks. So we spent about, a half hour doing Bucks Nets. Gonna try to quickly go through Bucks Hawks stuff. As far as matchups go, we'll start with this. The Bucks Hawks, this is not what you would expect to be the Eastern Conference Finals. We didn't expect to say, we're playing the Hawks in the Eastern Conference Final. Thought it'd be Philly, but hey, Philly didn't get there. Sucks to suck. So it is the Hawks. They've been playing really well. Trae Young's become, a star, and he's playing like it. He's proven himself. So as far as matchups go, I tweeted today, I wouldn't mind if the Bucks started Bryn Forbes, simply because in place of PJ, simply because if you start PJ, Trae Young could hide on him. I'm guessing that's what they would do, is put Trae Young on PJ, and then you can kind of hide Trae Young. Obviously, the Bucks can do what they can, and they're going to need to run more action to actually get some switches, hunt Trae Young. If you put Forbes out there and force Trae Young to guard Forbes, you're chasing around Forbes. You're going to be able. Forbes should be able to get off some good looks, and so there's a. I wouldn't mind them starting Brent. I wouldn't even mind them starting Pat, kind of for that same reason of just you're not allowed to. Then you can't hide him as much, and Pat's just been playing so well. But I don't mind them starting PJ either, because PJ, if you have Trae Young on PJ, then PJ can get offensive boards, and you can still kind of hunt that matchup. You can use PJ a little bit more, get him in that dunker spot type thing. And PJ, we just know, is going to bring it more defensively than Bryn or Pat or those guys. So I don't mind starting PJ at all. I think there is a possibility they could go with more Bryn Forbes, more Pat Connaughton, whoever, Bobby Portis, to really force Trae Young to, you not allow him to just hide on someone. And if you put, say, Bobby Portis out there, he's not big enough to guard Bobby Portis. He might then have to guard Jrue Holiday, and Jrue Holiday can feast on him. So, I don't know. We'll see. So I do expect more Forbes and Bobby in this series because there's not as much to worry about defensively against Atlanta compared to the Nets. They don't have that. They just don't have as much talent. You're not going against the best player in the world. You're not going against James Harden. You're not going like against Kyrie, whoever. Trae Young is good. Herter is good. Bogdanovich is good. All those guys are good, but it's not the same type of talent. You're not. There's not that. You're not scared of having those guys out there as much. Do you think Forbes can guard Young though? But I don't think Forbes would need to guard Trae Young. That's the other thing about starting Forbes is you can put Drew Holiday on Trae Young. I think that's a given. Drew Holiday's going to guard Trae Young. You can put Forbes then on Bogdan. And if they really want to hunt Forbes, you got to prove that Bogdan is healthy. And I don't think Bogdan's healthy right now. So that's kind of the thing is you can put Forbes and force Trae Young to play defense a little bit more, while also not giving up anything to Trae Young on for our defense. But and yes, they will try to attack Forbes, but as I said, it's not quite the same as a level as mismatches as you would have against the Nets. I don't think it's as blatant, and I think having to Trae Young is so bad defensively that being able to attack him a little bit more on offense, if the trade off is pretty even to me, so I don't mind it. Someone said, should Giannis play the 5 and put PJ on Collins? That's another thing they absolutely could do if they really want to. That would help with the whole Trae Young floater thing. Having Giannis at the 5, he's a little bit more agile and more versatile defensively than Brooke. But I don't know. It'll be interesting to see because they can go a lot of different ways with it. If they have Trae on Drew at all, attack it. No matter who they have him on, find Trae Young and attack him. Get him switched on to guys. Run some type of action to get switches because if you just play iso ball, it's not going to be the same. You're not going to really hunt those mismatches as they should. The one thing for us offensively that I really think is going to be an advantage is Chris Middleton. I think who really guards him? Kevin Herter, man, I think Chris can handle him. This is where they're kind of going to miss DeAndre Hunter because he'd be the one guy that you can throw on Chris and make sure he's kind of accounted for. But I don't they just don't really have a guy that can stop Chris consistently to me. So I'm expecting a pretty big Chris series. I think that's, again, the matchup that we can really attack. Let's move on. So Bucks defense. A large part of this series is going to be determined by how they handle the whole pick and roll thing with Trae as the ball handler because it happens so much. You watch the Hawks, they always do this. They did it against the Philly a lot with Embiid. Trae Young's ball handler at the top. They run a pick and roll. Trae comes off it. And if Embiid sinks a little bit, runs that, if he drops low, he's going to get off a floater. If he comes out, Trae's going to lob it. If they help, he's going to kick it. And it's like the whole question of how do you handle it? Do you let him take the floater? Do you come out and make him not take the floater, but then allow maybe some lobs? Do you help so you don't allow a lob, but then allow some threes? It's like, and to me, so the Hawks have run 17 pick and rolls per game in the playoffs with Trae as the ball handler. That's the most among any remaining playoff players. So he runs the most pick and rolls per game as a ball handler among anyone. Now this season he's been shooting 47% on those like mid-range floaters, and that's the shot the Bucks defense is designed to give up. Like he's going to take a ton of these, I think, because the whole Bucks defense is designed to drop. If you want to take that mid-range shot a crap ton of times, do it because it's not an efficient shot. You're going to have to make a ton of them to really make it worth it. And that's kind of how I'd continue to play this. People want to, we got to stop the Trae Young floater. Do we? Because unless he's really killing you with it in a game and you're like, okay, we got to change it up, I'm fine letting him get off. The one game against the Bucks this year that he took a bunch of, or that he played against the Bucks this year, he took a bunch of floaters. He took 13 floaters out of his 17 shots and missed a ton of them. Now, he's not usually going to miss as many as he did. He ended up shooting 3 for 17 in that game, I believe. He's not going to usually do that, but I don't think he's not an amazing shooter on those shots, and he needs to be in order to actually make it worth it. So I'm more comfortable allowing those floaters than I am overhelping on the long threes or allowing, alley-oop dunks because those are more efficient shots. So personally myself, I'm okay letting him take those. Don't come out too far if you're Brooke. Obviously get a hand up, semi-contest them, but you don't need to, absolutely smother him on those. If he really starts killing you, then change it up. It's a playoff series, so you have to be able to do that. Where, and hopefully Bud does. Where if there's a game where he's just destroying you with it, you've got to change it because it's the playoffs. But I'm comfortable going into every game with that game plan of, hey, let him take some floaters. Let him take those floaters. Let him take those floaters. Let him take those floaters. It's not an efficient shot until he starts killing you, then change it up mid-game. But then go back the next game to let him take those floaters until he proves that he can make a ton of them. Because the chances of him making a ton are not that good. But to me, that's really what's going to change a lot about this series is how the Bucks handle that and how Trae Young does making those shots because he's going to get a crap ton of them. He's going to shoot a ton of those mid-range floaters and just in between shots. The Bucks are going to go around. And it's going to kind of be that you meet him in the middle. He's going to get that shot. And yeah, they did it with Embiid, and I'm guessing Brooks going to be the same way. Someone said, can Collins stop Giannis? Collins has done a good job on Giannis, about as good a job as you can do. I think he held Giannis to 4 of 13 shooting in regular season, which is good. But I still think this is a series where Giannis is going to be able to get his. I don't think anyone can handle one-on-one. And the Hawks just don't have a ton of size. Really, their only big guys are Capella, Collins, and Gallinari is kind of big off the bench. But they just don't have a lot of size, and I think Giannis should be able to still get his. Collins will make things tough, but any minutes with Collins off the floor, Giannis is going to absolutely dominate, as he always has against that team. So when Collins is on the court, it'll be slightly tougher than normal, but nothing insane. When Collins is off the court, Giannis dominates. And, the Hawks aren't a fantastic defensive team. They're more of a try to outplay you offensively, try to outscore you, try to outshoot you. They have some good, Herter's a good shooter. Bogdanovich is a good shooter. Trae Young, obviously, great offensive player. And those lobs, all that, running that pick and roll, they try to outscore you. And to me, the Bucks defense is good enough to be able to handle them. And I'm not as worried about the Bucks offensively. I mean, I hope they're not as bad offensively as they were in this Nets series because they have the worst offensive rating among playoff teams left. But they do have the best defensive rating, which is surprising considering, they played the Nets. But I'm guessing the Bucks offense will be better than it was in the series. I'm hoping they get more ball movement. They started to, they looked a little bit better in Game 6, Game 7, even Game 5 before that last stretch. They looked better, and I trust the Bucks can shoot better. I don't think Drew's going to shoot as bad as he did. I don't think the team's going to shoot as bad as they did as a whole. 30%. That's probably not going to happen again for a team that shoots damn near 40%. That's not likely. And someone just said, I was just going to say, Drew will be better. Drew, he's going to be a lot better in this series because whoever you put on him, like Trae Young, if Trae Young's on him, he will absolutely feast. So hopefully they do that. And even if he's not on them, he should have a favorable matchup. And so as far as real quick, the defensive matchups, I think you put Drew on Trae Young. You put Chris on Herter because he's kind of played that. It could either be Herter or Bogdanovich, but lately Herter's kind of been the guy that you kind of have to chase around more, as he did with Duncan Robinson and Joe Harris. He's done a really good job with that. Chris has, so I'm comfortable put him on Herter. Bogdan, who's injured right now, you can put whoever the fifth starter is, put him on Bogdan, either PJ, Bryn, Pat, whoever that is, put him on Bogdan. And then Giannis on Collins and Brooke on Capella is the 5 I would go with. And I'm pretty comfortable with that. And again, if you start PJ, you can go a little bit more, a few different ways with it. There's a chance they could try to put Giannis on one of those wings, like Herter or Bogdan. I wouldn't be wild about that, but put PJ on Collins, do, whatever. There's a lot of different options they have, and that's kind of the benefit of getting PJ at the deadline, having all these versatile defensive players. But overall, I'm confident in this series. As I said, I think the Bucks offense can play better, and they're a really good defensive team. There's gonna be some mismatches that they can hunt, and the Hawks just talent-wise are not on that level of either the Bucks. They're not on the level of the Bucks, and they're not on the level of the Nets and those teams we just played, where you have to worry about those defensive mismatches so much. Can the Hawks get into some mismatches? Absolutely, but you're not afraid of them like you are with the Nets, where you're potentially getting a mismatch against the best player in the world. And also, excuse my voice because it's still a little bit gone from it. It goes at times from the games that I've been to, but we're doing our best. So my pick in this series, I'm going Bucks in 5, and this isn't me saying like absolutely not looking past this. I'm absolutely not saying this is going to be an easy series. The Hawks are legit. Why am I still on Bucks Nets recap? I'm supposed to say Bucks Hawks. The Hawks are legit. They are like they've proven themselves. They're really showing it right now. Herder's playing really well. Collins and Capella, obviously Trae Young. Bogdan's hurt, but still a very good player. I'm picking Bucks in 5, but I think they will be some close games. I think we take care of home court the first 2 games. We split in Atlanta, go up 3-1, and then we close it out in Milwaukee in Game 5 and go to the NBA Finals. Again, not me saying this is going to be easy, but I am picking the Bucks in 5. I think talent-wise, they just have what it takes, and for them to lose this, I feel like they'd have to be really dumb again. I mean, they were dumb in the Nets, some of those Nets games. They'd have to be really dumb to lose this series. I think they have to kind of beat themselves a little bit. Some of it would come from Trae Young just killing them, but I'm comfortable with the Bucks in this series. I'm confident, and I hate it because never trust the Bucks. But at the same time, it's a Hawks team that's not incredibly talented. They're playing well, but I think we have the talent mismatch, and as long as we don't screw it up, as long as Bud doesn't completely screw it up, we should be okay. Someone said Herder's definitely got to watch. Yeah, absolutely, and I trust that Chris can handle him, as he has with Duncan and Joe Harris. And the Hawks do lack experience, absolutely. They haven't really been here. Giannis has been here. Chris has been here. Drew has been to the second round. I don't think he's been to the third round. Did he go to the? No, he never been. No. He hasn't been to the conference finals. But we definitely have more experience than they do. And Bucks and someone said yes. I said Bucks and 6 if they get back into lapses of playing 1-on-1. Yeah, hopefully more ball movement, more 2-man games. And they did 2-man games with Giannis, but continue to do that so you can hunt some mismatches, so you can get Giannis moving, get the defense moving, and move the ball and give the ball to Giannis in some more beneficial areas. Get it to him down low. But just overall, I think Chris is going to have a good series because I don't know exactly how they're going to be able to contain him. That's where you miss Hunter. And I think Drew's going to play better. I don't see him playing any worse. And I certainly, I hope to God he doesn't play any worse, because especially offensively and shooting the ball, you have to think he's going to get better. And against this team, I don't know how he wouldn't. So to me, there's just not much that I'm completely afraid of. The only thing is maybe Trae Young can, go off a few games and torch them a couple times with floaters in the mid-range area. But again, if you want to live and die by mid-range shots, that's exactly the type of shot the Bucks defense is allowed to give up, is designed to give up, and the type of shot that analytics say you want to give up. And just let them take those shots. Don't overhelp. Don't come out too far in a lot of lobs, because threes and lobs are the 2 most efficient shots in the game. Make him take a bunch of mid ranges, and we'll see where it goes. If you have to adjust in the middle of a game, do it. But I am confident in this series. Let's do this, guys. Let's go to the NBA Finals and get this thing done. Me and Brandon might have another podcast. I'm trying to think. We might have another podcast in the middle of this series sometime. We tried to do one with the Nets series, but never really had time to. Probably after game 2 maybe or something. This weekend we might do a podcast to recap the first couple games and what we need to change or we need to keep doing, but how guys are playing, everything. But man, let's do this thing. super fun, super fun last week-ish of Bucks basketball. Ever since they went down 2-0, it's been really fun watching them get back in the series, have some huge games. Deer District's going insane. The hype around the Bucks is crazy. I absolutely love it. And of course, Game 7 was just iconic. Arguably the best sporting event that probably the best sporting event I'll maybe ever go to in terms of how great the game was, how big the game was, and how it all played out. And just something that I'll never forget. So let's keep this thing going and see if the Bucks can get to the NBA Finals. I'm picking them over the Hawks in 5. That does it for this episode. Thank you guys for tuning in, and we will catch you next time. Go Bucks.